Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy Kitchen. I'm the Executive Director at Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Week Ahead, where we discuss kind of everything that's on the horizon, obviously for the next week or next few days, when it comes to the Texas legislature and Texas politics in general. We are, of course, joined by our fearless leader, 𝗧𝗛𝗪, President and CEO of TFR. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Good to be here.
And then this morning, we're joined by special guest, Michael Quinn Sullivan, the publisher at Texas Scorecard. Good morning, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Jeremy. Great to be with you.
We appreciate you joining us this morning. We'll go ahead and get started. Normally, we have these last about 10, 15 minutes, try to give kind of a brief update on what folks can expect this week. Today marks day 77 of the 140-day legislative session, or the siege, if you will, on our liberties. We're over halfway done, but we're just now getting to the point in the legislative session by which bills are actually going to start moving through the process. So we'll start off by kind of giving everyone the heads up that the proposed state budget, right? This is taking the form of House Bill 1 this legislative session. It is the budget, the state of Texas budgets on a biennial basis, since they meet once every 2 years. And so this is the proposed state budget for fiscal years 2024, 2025. That was officially voted out of the House Appropriations Committee last week. Tim, you mind kind of giving us a 30,000-foot overview on kind of the next steps, if you will, what we expect to see here in the next few weeks?
Yeah, sure. It's going to get pushed out, and what happens with the budget is they do what's called a budget night. It obviously takes quite a long time to get through all of the articles. Sometimes it lasts 7 hours. Sometimes it lasts 15 hours. I think in the last couple of sessions, it's gone from about 10 a.m. till about 8 or 9 p.m. They kind of run out of gas about that time. We expect it's likely not going to happen this week. But we are anticipating it's probably going to be scheduled either for that Thursday before Easter or the week after Easter, just based on historical precedent and kind of when they've brought it up in the past. And so it's going to be a big ordeal. They will be on the floor for hours and hours and hours working through the budget article by article. And basically, House has the action first, and then it gets kicked over to the Senate. So here in the next 2 weeks, we should be dealing with the budget fairly quickly.
Now, Michael, of course, y'all folks at Texas Scorecard cover everything that happens in Texas politics and beyond. What is it that you're specifically looking for? Or as you travel across the state, as you speak to activists, do any of them talk about the budget or government spending? What specifically do you see happening?
Well, I think I'm hearing the same kind of thing that I know Tim Hardin is hearing, because he and I have talked about it offline, which is everywhere I go, I'm hearing folks say they see this massive budget surplus. They see 20 years of Republican promises to control government spending, and yet government spending is higher than ever, and our property tax burden is higher than ever. And I think that for most normal human beings, for people who have jobs, have kids, go to church, grill hamburgers in the backyard, normal people, they see that government has collected this big old, surplus of cash out of our pockets, and yet the government is, meanwhile, the Republicans are being stingy at giving it back. I mean, that's literally the language I heard speaking in Adkins, Texas, on Friday night. This very nice elderly lady saying that the Republicans are just being stingy giving her money back, and I had no answer for her.
Yeah, I think you speak to something that we speak about pretty frequently, right? As we travel around the state as well, we speak to activists, everyday Texans and Texas taxpayers. Is we have this record, this historic opportunity that some lawmakers have said, the comptroller said, of a $32.7 billion surplus, which represents nothing more than an overcollection of taxpayer money. And I think what you see, right, is Texas taxpayers especially concerned that they may not get all of that back, at least in the form of something like property tax relief or tangible property tax relief. You have kind of varying approaches to quote unquote relief making its way through the process this session. And then it seems like kind of this cash grab by some of the leading proposals for pet projects from lawmakers. Tim, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I agree with Michael. You know, we have we have our budget that is on track to have tripled since 2000, where population has grown roughly 40% in that same time. Of course, we put an additional spending cap that exempted property tax relief this last go around. I believe Senator Hancock brought that one. Where we're at right now in the budget is we actually have a massive cap this time go around. It's 12.33%. They're allowing the state budget to grow. This is mainly because inflation was at 9% last year for a good while, if y'all remember. So there's a lot of room to grow. We are under that cap, to my knowledge, in the current budget by about $4 billion. The concerning thing is, to your point, Jeremy, that this surplus that we have, the $32.6 billion, is taxpayer money. We should not necessarily be calling it a budget surplus. This is over collected taxpayer dollars. And the reality is we're using less than a third of that right now to pay down on property taxes. And the main excuse we're hearing around the Capitol is they don't want to break the spending cap, right? Well, but they are willing to kind of fluff up some of these other programs that you're talking about. What we would like to see, and the number one issue we hear over and over again for the last year and really for the last decade, has been ever increasing property taxes. And so we have this historic opportunity to where we are okay with breaking the spending cap and giving taxpayers back their money to give us as much relief as humanly possible. We would like to see that prioritized. That certainly is the number one issue for fiscal conservatives in the states. And so we would like to see as much of that stack, as up to 90% is really what we've been pushing for, to be used to compress tax rate and give taxpayers a much needed break in this ever decreasing economy we're in.
You know, it's interesting, Michael, because of course, in the platform for the Republican Party of Texas, now, of course, the legislature and every statewide office is controlled by Republicans. It has been for 2 decades. In the platform itself is language that says we not only want to put us on a path to eliminate the property tax, right, but we want to use existing budget surpluses to buy it down. Why is it, on day 77 of the legislative session in a legislature by which is controlled by Republicans, why is it you think that we have that we're having this discussion where we're concerned that they're not going to provide enough property tax relief to Texas taxpayers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem, a frustration that I've been trying to grapple with for a long time without really satisfactory answer. And what I think it boils down to is that, for any one of us now, the numbers have gotten so heavy, our property tax become so burdensome. This is less true than before. But at the end of the day, for each of us, we're looking at hundreds, in some cases, up to $1,000 more that we're paying in property taxes because of appraisal growth and the games that the local governments are playing, and honestly, the games the state is playing. But we have to think about all the opportunity costs of arguing loudly for that as compared to all the other things we care about, protecting children from grotesque sexualization, the poor quality of our schools, and just go down the line, all the things that we have to care about. On the other hand, there is a lot of money that flows into the pockets of a relatively few number of people, in the form of corporate welfare and the form of these of agencies of government that are all based in Austin. Who those folks have? Now that's 100% of their livelihood. That represents massive amounts of their inflow, and so they do go down and agitate loudly. And until we as citizens are agitating as loudly for what is ours as other people are agitating for what is ours, we're going to continue to fret about why it is lawmakers aren't giving us our money back. I think that there is also, something that Tim said a moment ago, and it just makes me want to set what little hair I have left on fire, is this idea, that lawmakers hide behind the spending limits when it comes to property tax relief, and yet, the three of us have seen this for years, where the legislature will think nothing of coming in and busting the spending limit for any number of reasons, but they won't do so for property tax relief. And it's an artifact of a misunderstanding put in place by the Democrats of what tax relief is. When you start with the premise that all money belongs to government and we're just allowed to have some, then yeah, calling tax relief spending, I guess, makes sense in a very perverted way. But if we believe that all money, all wealth belongs to the people, then tax relief should never be counted as property tax relief. The fact that they even have that on the books now, thanks to Kelly Hancock, but yet they still hide behind it, is indicative that many of the Republicans that you and I and our friends support and we block walk for and we send to Austin, they do not understand fundamentally the difference between whose money it is that they're spending.
All great points. We're talking about property tax relief. It is, it's expected this week. Last week, the House Ways and Means Committee passed out its kind of prioritized, quote unquote, property tax relief package. Takes the form of House Bill 2. It's expected this week. It'll go to the House Calendars Committee. I would assume likely get set on a calendar shortly thereafter, let's say maybe next week. Now the Senate has already passed their prioritized property tax relief package out of the entire Senate. So it's over here on the House side. I think the question is, there's 79 authors already on the House's version, right? On House Bill 2. I think for all intents and purposes, that's the one that'll pass out of the chamber. I'll pass this to either of you if you'd like to speak on this. Any thoughts as to kind of who wins out in this? We're in day 77 of the legislative session, over halfway there. Is it the House's version, which is the kind of the lowering of appraisal caps while also providing some additional compression, or is it the Senate's version, right, which is some compression, but it's mainly homestead exemptions? Do y'all have thoughts on that? If you were to prognosticate who wins out, what gets held hostage, where do we end up at the end of the legislative session?
Sure, I'll jump in first. So what the Senate has done, which is probably a little more intelligent than the House, is they've broken up their property tax package into 3 separate bills, right? So you have SB3, SB4, and SB5. SB3 is the homestead exemption increase going from 40 to 70. Yes, SB5, which is offering about I think $5.5 billion in compression, and then you have a business property reform in SB6. So excuse me, SB5. So the House, on the other hand, has combined compression and this property or this appraisal cap reform, right? Which, if you paid attention, I testified in HB2 when it was in committee, and after they kind of got past their invited testimony love fest, pretty much overwhelmingly, without hardly very few exceptions, everyone rejected the idea of appraisal cap reform, which is what they're trying to do is basically lower the homestead appraisal cap from 10 to 5, but they're applying it to all real property. And the general consensus from really business leaders and economists was that appraisal caps simply make things inequitable, and they ultimately hurt compression because they raise property tax rates. With as much opposing testimony, I'm kind of surprised, but not really, that they voted it out in the same form. And so it's coming to the floor. And so I think the House is going to have a lot of problems getting that bill passed if appraisal caps stay in that bill. Now, they are offering twice as much compression, a little over 11 billion in the Senate, which is the best form of property tax relief. It's lasting, it's permanent. We would like to see pretty much all property tax relief take the form of compression. And of course, we want to see them be put on a path towards elimination. And so in its current form, because the Senate there's kind of chopped up into different bills, I would place my bet that at least a few of those Senate ones have a better chance than the House. The caveat would be if the House is able to remove those appraisal caps out of the bill with floor amendments, I think they increase their chances there.
Michael, did you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I think Tim has has kind of said all I would say there, except to note that the most interesting person not in the conversation currently is Greg Abbott. And for, that Greg Abbott made a lot of hay, if y'all remember back in July, saying he wants to put Texas on a path to property tax elimination. He seems to have lost the map, or at least he's not talking about it anymore. Now, I have not heard or seen anything from Greg Abbott putting his fingers one way or the other, and maybe he's not going to. Maybe he's just going to declare a huge victory with whatever passes. But I think if Greg Abbott is serious about that, loud statement he made back in July, then I think maybe we could see something closer, as Tim said, to the Senate's version be what carries the day. But if Greg Abbott's going to be silent and lawmakers play their games, I fear that the weakest, the House and Senate tend to negotiate for who can strip away our rights, our liberties, and our property better than the other. And I fear without Greg Abbott inserting himself, he's going to have to feel pressure to do that. He's going to feel pressure from voters if he's going to engage in that way. But I think we're now at the point where we as citizens have to, and he as the governor has to.
That's a great point. It'll be interesting to see. You're right. He did call for the elimination of property tax. Obviously, at his State of the State address in, I guess, early February now, he stopped short of mentioning the path that he had previously mentioned, as we highlighted several times. It'll be interesting to see where they end up at the end of this. The last kind of priority or thing that we're watching, and of course, we're watching tons of issues as they go through the process, but the last kind of big thing that we wanted to give an update on is for those that maybe are following the proposed ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. That was passed out of the Senate State Affairs Committee, I guess, last week or the week before. It is likely it'll be put on the Senate intent calendar this week for them to vote on. Now, of course, just as a brief reminder, in the past, at least, the last few legislative sessions, the Senate has not been the problem child when it comes to this ban. It's been the House. And so with the assumption that it passes the Senate, no problem again, I think the question in our mind, and we talked about this on last week's episode, is does a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying have a chance in the House this cycle, especially if the assumption is it goes to the House State Affairs Committee as it has previously? That's currently chaired by State Representative Todd Hunter, a Republican out of Corpus Christi, who in the past has voted against such a proposal. So before I move on from that, did y'all have anything to add to that?
I consider a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying, kind of really high on the things that should be done. Sadly, I also put it pretty low on the list of things that this legislature will accomplish.
Yeah, I tend to, it's kind of been lost in, all the things that we're dealing with. However, those who were paying attention back in 2020, it passed with over 95% of Republican primary voters. It was a previous priority. There's a lot going on this legislative session. And as you said, I think 𝗧𝗛𝗘 is carrying the sister bill over in the House. And the State Affairs Committee is chaired by Hunter, who has been in opposition in the past. We also have Charlie Guerin, Metcalf, I believe Hefner's on there. I think Hefner might have been friendly in the past. The other ones have all not been friendly at all to the concept of taxpayer-funded lobbying or banning that practice. And so they have an uphill battle just to get it through the House State Affairs Committee. The only one encouraging thing I can say is after Dustin Burrows' the preemption bill hearing, he had TML and a bunch of other people come up there and do what taxpayer-funded lobbyists do, which is, lie and deceive and push for policies that hurt taxpayers. And so he vocally said, hey, maybe we should ban taxpayer-funded lobbying. And of course, Dustin Burrows, being the calendar's chair, does have a weighty position. Now, is that going to be enough to push it through state affairs? Well, I'm skeptical, but at least we have some House members talking about this, and so we at least have a few optimistic statements. But we will see. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm extremely skeptical when it comes to the makeup of the State Affairs Committee in the House.
All good points. I just want to remind folks that if you do tune into the legislature in the ongoing 88th legislative session, the House convenes at 2 p.m. today. Same with the Senate. Today is day 77 of the 140-day legislative session. Of course, we, as always, are following along. You can find all of our work at 𝗧𝗛𝗘 Before I pivot to questions, Michael, if you would like to plug Texas Scorecard, where they can find you, where they can find your work, you personally, that sort of thing, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Rich. I'd love folks to check us out. TexasScorecard.com is our website, and Twitter, Texas Scorecard. You can find me at MQ Sullivan here on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you. We appreciate everyone joining us today for the week ahead. Make sure to join us again next week for another episode of the week ahead. And of course, join us on Thursday where we will publish our audio video form podcast, Taxpayer Talks. You'll see that published, TexasTaxpayers.com. Again, appreciate everyone joining us this morning. God bless Texas.
Hey, you made it to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that way you're notified next time we post a video and update to the channel. Thanks again.